Inspiring. So good to be together, man. What a beautiful day. It's just good. I just love having people in the sanctuary, even though it's like a quarter of us. This is great. Like Matt said, you guys weren't here when it was like 5 of us. It was awkward. So this is awesome. So good to be together. Give a few housekeeping items here to kind of keep us all together. I know we've been doing the communion cups, right? Individual communion cups. If you want to dispose of that, we have some trash cans in the back. Just give you guys a heads up on that. A few other things as well today, 11:30, we have a going away party over Zoom for Ryan, Andrea, and Sophia Chacon. So if you'd like to join that and say your goodbyes to them, they're going to be going to Colorado Springs for Dr. Chacon to start his teaching career. So we're going to send them off 11:30. So that's going on today. At 1 o'clock, we'll also have another meeting. That's for all the youth and family ministry. That's teens, preteens, and the parents. That's at 1 p.m. Over Zoom. So please be there for that if that involves you. 7 p.m. on Wednesday this week. I'm very excited for this. Our dear friend Maxim Sotnichenko from all the way from Siberia. Yes, Louis, Max is going to preach to us. Me and Louis went to Russia and he almost got lost in Russia. And that's not a joke. But Max, who dear friend of ours, we support churches in Siberia through Eurasian Missions. He's going to be giving us an update on how things are going there. He's preaching the word to us. So 7 p.m. over Zoom, all right? We're going to hear about how the churches in Russia are doing. So it was good. It was good to catch up with Max yesterday and just see how things are going, even with the pandemic there. He's doing well. The last time I saw his daughter, she was 3 or 4 now. She's like up to Max's shoulder. She's 13. It is pretty insane how fast time flies. So it's good to catch up with old friends. Speaking of old friends, we have a special old friend here in the building with us. A couple old friends. We have Miss Robin Hawkins, obviously in the back. Layla's here, and of course, I don't trust me. I asked Vince to preach. He's preaching over Zoom for the Northwest Indiana Church, so we can blame Kurt Simmons for that. Kurt stole him from us, which we all love Kurt too, amen. But it's good to have the Hawkins in town. It's good to have family, and they've so many meaningful memories, right? With Vince and Robin and the girls, and obviously with Max as well. My wife and I would not be married without their promptings. Speaking of marriage, Louis proposed this past weekend, right? I think she said yeah. She said yeah. Randall was so proud at men's midweek. Bro, your dad's so proud of you, bro. So it's pretty cool, man. Congrats, brother. So Katrina and Louis, that's the thing. Pray for Katrina. Yes. Amen. Nah. Louis is my guy. So, but yeah, speaking of marriage, right? Having them in town, having the Hawkins in town, talking to Max, they basically made sure that we saw the value in each other. This is a quote. My wife said she would never marry me. It's a quote, right? Yeah, she did say that. Said she'd never marry an Asian. It's like, really? Okay, never. You say these never things. And then you go to Russia. We went to Russia with Louis on a mission trip. Things changed in Russia. Things changed in my heart because I felt the same way. I just never verbalized never, right? I knew better than to say never. I could say like, probably not. Vince would be like, what about Melissa? Probably not. Melissa goes, never. So, I think God had to humble her out. So it just felt this idea of us being married just felt impossible, right? Like God would have to move mountains. God, we're being talking about faith, right? In the Faith Hall of Fame and how it takes faith to move mountains. For both of us, it's like, this is never going to happen. No way. It's gonna take everything. You go to Russia, things start to happen. I still remember when I felt like, wow, this could actually happen. We were on the plane ride back. And for some reason, I started asking her questions about her family. I never asked her questions about anything. Melissa's so nice. She's a therapist, and so she'll ask me questions. She's just a genuinely curious person. And she'd ask me questions. We'd have intern meetings and stuff like that. We did campus ministry here. She'd ask me questions. I'd be like, yes. And she'd wait, because in a usual human dialogue, the other person asks questions back. No questions from me. I just eat my food that usually she brought, and it'll be fine. And so she'd be like, this guy is a mean person. And she was not wrong in a lot of ways. God worked despite me to help the campus ministry do decent when we were here. And, but, I'm on this plane ride, and I'm asking her questions. All of a sudden, I care about her family. I'm like, what's happening to me? Why am I asking her questions about her family? We're on our descent. And so at that point, I'm starting to like her. I'm like, this is bizarre. I can't believe I'm starting to like this girl. But I forget, if those of you don't know, I get motion sickness pretty easily. And I forgot that, right? I was like, well, I'm in Russia. It can't happen. And the inevitable starts to happen as we make our descent. And I can feel it, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's about to go down. I'm gonna vomit, and I'm right next to the girl I think I like. And I remember, oh, Melissa, I'm feeling so sick. I'm feeling so sick. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. And, I vomited right next to her, right next to her. And that's when I knew. I was like, man, she's in it to win it. If she still likes me, after I just literally puked right next to her on this airplane, I think we have a deal. And she still did. She still liked me. We've been married 8 years later, in about a month. But 10 days will be a month. 10 days. I lost what day it was. So, but we're going to talk about how, faith, impossible things happen, right? Faith happens when we care enough about something. And then, when we care, we start to get invested and we have a covenant with something, right? Whether it's puke or anything ugly. You're like, no, this is covenant status. So we're going to hang in there. Amen? Because when you care about something, you get invested. And it's like, okay, even if things go haywire, I'm in too deep. I'm in this. So we are going to ride this thing out. Noah is a great example of that for us. Let's go turn our Bibles to Hebrews chapter 11. The title of the lesson this morning is Entrusted with Faith, Holy Fear. I'm going to talk about what does it mean to have holy fear? Because holy fear consists of those two things I just talked about. Consists of care, and care then turns into a covenant. All right? And Noah shows us what that means. Hebrews 11, and we're going to start in verse 7. You guys there? Digitally or physically? All right, Hebrews 11, verse 7. It says, by faith, yes, it is 7, right? By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. This idea of holy fear struck out to me because it's what allowed Noah to do the impossible, build an ark. What's the first thing that we see in holy fear? Holy fear cares. If we want to have holy fear, we got to care about what God cares about. Just like when I was in the airplane, I had to care about Melissa, and she had to know I had to care about her in order for her to withstand the vomit, right? And sometimes life is full of vomit and all these things that are just ugly. If we don't care about what God thinks, we're not going to withstand the ugly. Got to care, right? The Greek word for holy fear is a word called eulabeia, E-U-L-A-B-E-I-A, which can be translated to pious care or concern, or a deeply care. Noah possessing holy fear meant that basically he cared more about how God felt than everything else. Man, God cares about this? All right, well, I care about this. He was concerned about what was important to God. That's what that means. Holy fear says, man, I care more about what God feels than what everyone else in the world feels combined. Because God cares about me. God cares about us. So I got to care about what God cares about. We know Noah cared about how God felt because, honestly, he probably had a lot of other feelings competing for his loyalty. Think about who Noah was, right? One feeling that Noah may have felt was that, man, this command to build an ark was probably pointless. Verse 7 says that God warned Noah about things not yet seen. God was literally acting on something he had never seen before. Noah probably lived in Mesopotamia, meaning he was a long way from the ocean or even a decent-sized lake like Lake of the Ozarks. Never seen a drop of rain, let alone enough rain to consist of a storm or a flood for that matter, let alone a 40-day flood. Noah could have been like, God, that just sounds ridiculous. Why are you having me do something that literally is, as of today, impossible to even imagine? What's the point of me doing all this? Am I really going to grab the few nails I have? Keep in mind, I don't think Noah had a degree in ship making. I don't know if that's even or carpentry. I don't know. I don't think he was a naval expert of any sort, right? The guy lived in Mesopotamia, right? But Noah, he could have felt those things. I would have felt those things. But Noah cared more about how God felt than how he felt. I think because we'll read Genesis here. It says Noah was a righteous man who walked faithfully with God. He cared about what God felt. And I think he felt cared about by God. So what does he do? He starts chopping down all that lumber that would take to build it. They say that ark is the size of 1.5 football fields, 3 to 4 stories high. Some of you guys have been to, I know Matt's talking about going to the ark experience in Kentucky, right? You see it there. It's 1.5 football fields. That's the size of the boat. Can you imagine how many trees that would take? One man did that. And then they say in theory his kids helped him, but when he started it, he didn't have no kids yet. That's how long it took to him to finish this. He didn't have kids. By the time he was done, he had multiple kids who could help him with the ark. One massive tree at a time, all by himself. Maybe with every chop of a tree, Noah thought to himself, pointless, pointless, pointless. Why? Why? As people are like, yes, pointless. It's like, I know. But he said, you know what? I know how I feel, but I know how God feels about this. And God's been faithful to me. No one cares about God. We read about Genesis, right? Everyone forgot about God at this point. But Noah said, you know what? God loves me. So I got to trust him right now. I got to care more about his feelings than my own feelings. Noah also could have felt alone, isolated, mocked by everyone around him. Did you hear what the guy down the street is trying to do? Chop down. You know what he's doing that for? He's making an ark. Yeah, that's a big boat. Yes. Yeah. 3, 4 stories high, apparently, is what he said God called him to do. Guy's weird. Stay away from that guy. And let alone, obviously you already feel the judgmental pressure, right? But let's not forget here, Genesis chapter 6, the beginning that tells us the whole world was wicked at this moment. So wicked that the Lord's heart was deeply troubled. So you got to imagine the amount of wrath that Noah would normally face from our culture was probably quadrupled at this point. Here's the thing. I don't know if Noah picked up on the fact that God was deeply troubled by his prayer life at this point, but I do know that somehow Noah was able to sense that, man, God, this is important to God. And this matters to him, so I got to do what I need to do. And we also know that Noah stood out and was most likely judged by everyone else around him. It's one thing to be the only guy in the world who's trying to follow God. It's another thing to be building a massive boat in your front yard for all your judgmental neighbors to see every single day. It's one thing for you to do that and people be like, go Noah, go Noah, go. That would be still tiring. Like, oh, yes, thank you for the cheer. It's like, awesome. This is still really hard. But then you add on, it's not go, it's boo Noah. It's Noah, you're nuts. And every day, same neighbors pass by. Still haven't quit, have you? Really? You still think you got some kind of special connection with God? What makes you different than everybody else? Noah could have felt embarrassed about his lot in life. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is my lot in life. This has become my vocation. Building a pointless boat. And I don't even know if we've never seen a drop of rain. This is my career. This is who I am. This is my identity. It's building this boat. And sometimes as Christians, we're like, what is my identity? Oh, I'm so behind. Oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. It's not enough for us to just say, I love God. And so we get caught up in the world and we get, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. And then we blame God. And God's like, am I not enough? God was enough for Noah. Maybe he didn't always feel like it, but God was enough. And we see it with every chop of the axe. He could have given up and said, I just need a normal life. I need a normal life. I can feel it as a disciple. Man, discipleship's hard, man. I just need a normal life. I want normal discipleship, whatever that means. You know, discipleship's radical. Like, there's no such thing as normal discipleship. But I'm sure Noah, maybe he times it. Wait, he literally, every time you got to think, he had a life where he didn't have to be literally so out there with his faith. Maybe he wanted that. Like every day. It's not like Noah was even being vocal about his faith. His faith was just literally out there every single day. In the form of this massive boat he was building in front of his house. There's my faith right there. I don't have to say anything to you. There it is. Once again, no one had ever seen rain. His neighbors probably thought he lost his mind. But holy fear says, man, this hurts. All of this is painful. To feel judged, to feel alone, to feel forgotten by God. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I feel abandoned. I feel like a one-man army, and I feel like I'm on an island. But I also know, I think this is what separates Noah, and I think what we can learn from him. Noah could have felt those things, but I think he also said, man, I also know that God is hurting right now. The situation around me hurts God. I'm the only one left that still is by his side. God's hurting. And I know that by me listening to this ridiculous command, God feels loved. So as hard as this is, if this is what it takes for God to feel loved, the God that created this, created me, this is what it takes if this is all he's asking me to do, for me to say, man, I love you back, because that means so much to him, then I'll do it. You know what? Because God's my friend. God's my friend. He's my best friend. Holy fear is caring about friendship with God, even when our friendship with God takes us to scary places like suffering. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 6. We'll read a little bit more about Noah here. We got to care more about how God feels than how we feel. We live in a culture where, it's not how I feel. It's not how I feel. I need to feel this first. No, that's not faith. That is just not faith. That is a false narrative from Satan. I met up with Sean Fugate the other day to pray, and he was telling me how he was convicted by Davion's lesson at our last men's midweek over Zoom. And specifically the part that convicted Sean was, Davion was talking about Paul's desire to suffer like Jesus suffered, right? Pretty convicting point. And Sean was sharing about how that desire to suffer for him, he's like, man, I've never desired that, but you know what? All that Davion said, it makes me want to share the gospel more with others. It's like, how'd you get that place? He said, well, because if I share the gospel, even if I get ridiculed or get rejected by multiple people, you know what? I'm suffering. I get to suffer for the gospel. And on the bright side, if someone doesn't mock me, and if they want to come to church, someone's coming to church. So I can't lose. So either I'm suffering for Jesus, which is good, or someone's open to Jesus, which is even better. I've never wanted to suffer. I need to suffer for Jesus. I'm like, man, it's a guy with holy fear. He wants to suffer for Jesus because of what Davion said over Zoom based on God's words. Like, man, God said it. It's good to suffer. I should suffer. No one walks around, I'd like to suffer today. And Sean says, well, God wants me to suffer. Awesome. Let's do it. Sean cares more about how God feels and what God shares with us in the Bible. that he's willing to suffer so that he can be obedient to God. But I think Sean wants to suffer because at the core of that is that he cares more about how God feels than how he feels. And even deeper than that is because I think Sean feels loved by God. Sean knows that God cares about him, regardless of the circumstances of his life, and regardless of how he feels. This morning, where does our devotion to our own feelings stand in relation to our devotion to how God feels? In other words, who's our God this morning? Is it how God feels? Is it how we feel? How do we feel about our future, our finances, our family, our this or that, this, that, and the third, right? I'm not saying our feelings don't matter, right? Or that we don't talk about how we feel. I actually think talking and praying and processing our emotions with others is a huge benefit of being a disciple of Jesus, especially in times like this, where there's societal and cultural unrest, racial tension, and a pandemic. We've all been pent up. It's like, all right, well, this is insane. I need to talk to somebody. Well, guess what? You're in the church. You got plenty of people to talk to. But once we've talked through where those feelings are coming from, are we still willing to submit those feelings back at the foot of the cross? Matthew 6, verse 9. Let's read about Noah here. Man, let's read about his life. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both of them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves on the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that's to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. This part's convicting. Verse 22 tells us Noah did everything just as God commanded him. God gave Noah all those specific details, right? He could have just said, hey, build an ark. That would be, build a big ark. That would have been challenging enough as it is. He said, no, it needs to be this, and that, right? Not only did Noah not hesitate to obey, but he didn't skip a single step. Holy fear cares about how God feels, and holy fear does not take shortcuts. If we want to develop holy fear, if we want to develop an attitude that cares this morning, especially about God's commands, we don't take shortcuts. Holy fear is cultivated in our hearts when we are completely open about our hearts with others. Not somewhat open, not just open about this or that, but open completely and consistently about what's going on in our hearts. We can't expect to work through our feelings and be able to obey despite how we feel if we are holding back our hearts from other disciples. There's no way. It's not the process was not meant to work like that. You can try it for a little bit. You might be able to withstand a few days, but that is not sustainable. In John 13, right before Jesus is about to go to the upper room, or he is in the upper room, he's about to start his speech, right? Which is where he shares famous passages with us, like, as I have loved you, so love one another. Or I'm the way, the truth, and the life. These huge nuggets. Right before he shares all that, in John 13, verse 21, it says that Jesus was troubled in spirit. That same word for troubled is the same word described to the disciples when they thought Jesus was a ghost when he was walking on water. That's the kind of fear Jesus had in his heart. And yet he shared his heart. Holy fear, our care and fear of God, overcomes our fear of the world. And it doesn't take shortcuts. We can't expect to be led by the Spirit and to be empowered by the Spirit if we are not being spiritual people and praying and reading our Bibles. But when life gets hard or busy or challenging, the first thing we want to do is stop reading or praying. That's what it is for me. A lot going on today. Well, I can't pray as much as I usually do. And I may not be able to read today because too much going on. That's not just taking shortcuts. That's not just being fearful or faithless. That's foolish. That's called throwing away the life jacket. That's called, I don't actually trust God. So instead of looking for answers from him and his word, I'm going to start doing what the world does and create my own answers and share my own truth. Because I have my own truth. What does that even mean? That's saying, I need to share my truth. No, Jesus is the truth. I share my truth. This is crazy. Noah, when called to build something impossible, chose to trust in what God called him to do and was able to do so because he cared more about how God felt than what he felt. He did everything he was called to do because he cared about everything God cares about. Let's read about what happens as a result. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. Hebrews 11, verse 7. The second part says, by his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Holy fear cares, and care creates covenants. When we care about something, we get to a place where we enter into what God calls a covenant. And of course, we see this in Hebrews 11, right? The covenant involves Noah saving his family, which is God's part of the covenant, which is pretty awesome that God would do that because he forgave humanity. But let's read about, we read this, we skipped over this. I think this is important. Chapter 6, verse 18 says, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Covenant means, you know what? I know how I feel. It's not how God feels. And there's tension there. But I'm going to do what God says anyway. And I think too many times as Christians, I think we can rely on our feelings. We say things like, I just don't feel led by the Spirit. Or I don't feel inspired. I just don't feel it. Honestly, that's what we mean. I just don't feel like doing it. I don't feel led by God. That sermon didn't inspire me. The Bible talk was not inspiring. Our D times have been kind of flat. Our prayer times have been kind of flat. You guys ever been there? I'm like, man, I had stretches of prayer where it's like, God, are you here? That fast last week, I was just hungry the whole time, barely prayed. You ever had that fast where I didn't even pray today? I just didn't eat. That wasn't a fast. That was a waste of a fast. Like, you just feel awful. It's like, geez, now I got to fast again. And it's like, what was the point of that fast? I'm reading my Bible. It just feels like I'm reading, a textbook on biology, and I'm like in 9th grade. I don't like science. I'm bad at science. It's like, why do I keep reading this? It's not jumping out to me. So you know what? I just don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it. I don't feel led by the Spirit. What we're really saying is, I don't feel like it. And that's not covenant. Because we all know when Jesus went to Gethsemane, he didn't feel like it in Gethsemane. He just said, I don't feel like God. He so didn't feel like it, he prayed 3 times. And he so didn't feel like it, he was sweating drops of blood. That's not feeling like doing something. I I don't think we've ever not felt like doing something so bad that we were sweating drops of blood. I don't think it's ever gotten that bad for any of us. And that's where it went for Jesus. That was basically Jesus saying to his dad, Dad, I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it. This is this most real, vulnerable place with God. But God, Jesus said, you know what? This is about covenant. Covenant is no longer about how I feel. I just know what's right. I know what God said, and I'm going to do it. That is what holy fear, and that's what care leads to. We start caring more about what God feels, and we start responding to what God feels, we will enter, and this is where faith really kicks in, because Noah had to build this ark for years. And it happened. I'm sure there were stretches, not just of days, not just of weeks, but stretches of years where he felt like, unbelievable. God has not called this off like a massive prank. I'm still waiting for God to be like, it's a joke. Like Willy Wonka, right? Like, oh man, that was it. You passed the test. Well, what was the Willy Wonka? Who was the boy's name in Willy Wonka? I forgot. Charlie, you won all the candy, right? We wait for the candy, like, Willie, God, can you just be like Willy Wonka and bail me out? And God's like, no, because this is about your character. You will never know me, you will never understand me until you go through stretches of life where you just do what you don't feel like doing. Because that's been my existence. Remember, Genesis was a story at the beginning of time where God said, I will never do this again. As much as it hurt me, I'm going to do this once because it's so bad right now. And I will never do this again. And you know what? We read the Bible. What happens? It happens again and again and again and again. It gets really bad in the Bible, right? You read about Judges? You ever read the book of Judges? That's like reading Genesis all over again. Like, God, can you believe the patience and love and perseverance and steadfastness of God? And then we go through the New Testament and they killed Jesus. God could have had every right to be like, you just killed. That's done. We're done. You killed my boy. It's over. It's a wrap. No, he's still waiting. God's existence is doing things that he doesn't probably feel like doing. And then we have the nerve to say, it's just not feel that. But you know what the Spirit says, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 says, the Spirit God gave us is not a spirit of timidity, which is, I don't feel like doing it, I'm timid. It's a power. It's a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. What self-discipline is? Self-discipline is, I don't feel like doing it, but I'm still going to do it. Even if I never feel like doing it, but I got self-discipline. The love in that passage is agape, not phileo, not friendship love. This is like that sacrifice love. It's agape love in that passage. That's being spiritual. You want to be spirit-led? Do something you don't want to do. You'll be spirit-led in that moment. Appreciate Nathan. Nathan started up here, share communion. I'm like, come on, Nathan. It's my boy, Nate Dog. Come on, man. He wasn't lying about who he was when he first studied the Bible. I remember hopping in Bible studies with Edwin and Nathan. How much you play video games? Like, really? It's a lot of, I like video games. But that's a lot of video games, man. I'm like, wow. And then Nathan, he just started doing things. He just started caring about what God felt. He started with him. I remember him being like, wow, this is how God feels. At first it was, I care about what this is doing to me. I remember that study. I don't know if Nathan remembers that, but Nathan was like, man, this is, I'm lost. And then it was, man, God saves me because I'm lost, because he cares about me. What does Nathan do after that? Nathan is one of the most self-disciplined guys I know. The guy, he works. His dad would agree. Like, Nathan works, it's like, it's awesome. But man, the guy, we challenged him to get a job. When he became our unpaid, unofficial teen intern, And he just met with all the teens all summer last year. And I think sometimes part of that, you didn't want to do it, right? Nathan didn't want to do some of that stuff, but he did. And I appreciate how the Spirit has remolded him into a disciple of Jesus. Because that's what the Spirit does when you are spiritual and you do things you don't feel like doing, which is actually the most Christ-like thing you can do. I just want to challenge us. We want to be spiritual. We want to cultivate holy fear and live in holy fear. Each day this week, do one thing for God you don't feel like doing. And you know what? Just stretch that out into maybe the whole month. And if you still feel like doing it, why don't you just go for the whole year? Then after that, why not just try your whole life? Because Noah did this for a lifetime. Remember, the lifespans were huge back then. So he did this for multiple lifetimes for us. He did it every day. Did something he didn't feel like doing. Holy fear will then create the impossible. Right? We now know that the size of that ark was huge. It was massive. And it saved humanity. But it started with just Noah caring about what God cared about. Something simple as that. Holy fear is caring more about what God cares about than what we care about. Transitions to that into covenants. Covenant says, man, you know what? I don't know when I'll ever feel this way. But I know how God feels. And that's what matters the most to me. As long as I know that this is how God feels. And you know what? I think if we focus on how God feels, our feelings will catch up. If you're a somewhat sensitive human being, if you focus on Jesus long enough, I think you'll get the point. That guy really loves me. There's no way you focus on the cross every day for the rest of our lives and be like, that guy didn't care. It's impossible. It's the power of the gospel. We focus on how Jesus did what he did not want to do, our lives will change forever. Amen? Amen. Holy fear creates care, and it creates covenant. Amen? Love you guys.